Welcome to the 2019 Small Cities Development Program Application Training. The goal of this program is to develop viable communities by providing financial assistance to address the need for decent, safe, affordable housing, economic development, and public facility needs. We're trying to provide a suitable living environment by expanding economic opportunities, principally benefiting low to moderate income households. All proposed activities must meet a federal objective. LMI, which is low to moderate income households on an individual basis. LMA, which is low to moderate income people on an area basis. Also, the program objectives are to alleviate slum and blight on an area basis and urgent community development need, such as a disaster situation. 70% of HUD allocated funds, all these projects combined, must meet an LMI or LMA federal objective. If you have more questions, please see the SCDP A to Z guide for additional information. Eligible applicants include cities with populations under 50,000 people or counties and townships with unincorporated populations of fewer than 200,000 people. The list of cities and counties below are entitlements and are not eligible for the Small Cities Development Program. The application step process is as follows. Step 1 is the pre-app, due November 15th, 2019. Step 2 is a full application, due February 28th, 2020. Please be sure to send in a copy and an original in paper by 4:30 p.m. on those dates. If you need more information, both are located on the Apply tab of the Small Cities Development Program portion of DEED's website. Once the pre-app has been submitted, DEED staff will rank and screen the applications. They'll be ranked as competitive, marginally competitive, and non-competitive. DEED will then send invitation notices to the cities that are competitive and marginally competitive, asking to submit a full application. In this time, you might be working with your rep also to tweak or change or improve potential scoring for the full application. Cities are allowed to procure grant administrators for this program. For-profit administrators, including engineering and architecture firms, must be procured via the common rule. If you are working with a nonprofit as an administrator, this rule does not apply. DEED does have an admin policy. The administrative funds are capped at 15% of actual project costs. For public facility projects, there's a maximum of $20,000 or 15%, whichever is less. Up to 5% of the administrative budget can be drawn for startup expenses, such as environmental review, policy formulation, etc. This does not include the writing of the application and pre-app. There are a number of different applicant requirements. Projects must be completed in 36 months from the award letter date. One application can be submitted per community. Local governments must adopt a resolution to apply for the dollars. They must also adopt a citizen participation plan and policy, hold a number of different public hearings, and have all documents signed by the proper authorized representative of the community. If a city has gotten the grant in the past and has program income, this program income must be used first before tapping into new grant funds. Applicants are subject to a capacity and performance evaluation, and some non-eligible communities might include the following things: having past due monetary obligations, not current on your SCDP reporting, having federal audit findings, or other unresolved Small Cities Development Program monitoring issues on previous grants. Another applicant requirement that is very important to understand is you must take measures to determine if any elected officials are interested in participating on any proposed rehab activity in the future. Make sure those that are interested and eligible abstain from voting on advancing a pre-app or full application. There are federal requirements tied to these dollars. There's an extensive environmental review process, fair housing and equal opportunity policies and action items, federal Davis-Bacon wage requirements, and this includes on rental properties with 8 or more units, commercial rehab projects, and any public facility projects. There is annual and final reporting, monitoring, which is ongoing throughout the program, and a program income policy reuse plan. There are a few different types of applications that you could apply for. One would be a single-purpose application. This would be any sort of housing activity, or you could also apply as a standalone public facility project. Keep in mind, economic development or commercial cannot be a single standalone activity. It can only be public facility or a housing component. You could also do a comprehensive application, or as we say, a comp. Comps are 2 or more related projects in one application. A good example of this would be owner-occupied housing rehab as one of your activities, and the other is commercial rehab for an activity. Below is a list of eligible activities for your grant app. This would include owner-occupied housing rehab, rental rehab, commercial rehab, or public facilities. Within public facilities, this includes water and wastewater projects, community centers, streetscape, and aesthetics. For any project, there are different eligible uses of funds. For your housing components, which would be rental rehab and owner-occupied rehab, you want to look at all the housing quality standards, maybe different accessibility projects like grab bars in the bathroom, or even widening a door frame for a wheelchair to get through. You'd want to address any health and safety issues. A good example of this would be lead remediation and any energy efficiency updates, new windows, insulation, doors, etc. For commercial rehab, we're really looking to go inside out. You want the building to be a healthy, usable shell, so any business could come in and out. And this would include projects like code enforcement, anything to get your building up to code, accessibility, ADA projects, energy efficiency, and facade work. For public facilities, a lot of times it will be repairing existing infrastructure. So this could be rehabbing a wastewater treatment plant, rehabbing water and waste lines, maybe a water tower, something like that. If you want other project examples, make sure you check the A to Z guide for more information. For the next portion of this training, we're going to talk about owner-occupied housing rehab. For owner-occupied rehab housing, the max per unit, which would be one single-family house, is $25,000. There's a deferred loan amount minimum of 7 years, which is required by deed. We are always looking for good leverage sources in the applications, that there are attainable goals, and within your application you're demonstrating a need and what that impact will be with these grant funds. For applications that will have owner-occupied housing within them, you need to set a citywide boundary or a target area boundary for where the projects will happen. Citywide only applies to communities that are 1,000 people or less, and target areas would be the 1,000 threshold plus size cities, and they can create a target area A and a target area B. Typically, these will be about a couple square blocks for each one for each target area. And why this is done is we're really looking for impact within the community. You have a larger community in quotes. So we're really looking to rehab a bunch of different houses that are fairly close to each other, where you can see some of that rehab ripple effect. So this would be a good example of what we're looking for in an application if you're going to be going citywide. And in this scenario, you have a city that has a population of 600 people. There's 150 homes within the city. 100 are suitable and in need of repair, and 50 are interested and qualify for the grant dollars, which is very important. They also have to qualify. Just because somebody is interested doesn't mean that they're meeting the income thresholds that there are. And within an application, we really like to see, say for your citywide map here, the different houses that are interested and qualified, or the different houses that are in need, shown somehow within the application, so we have a better visual on what the funds, where they're going to be going. For owner-occupied housing applications, make sure if there is a target area A and a target area B, you're combining that data to include a sum total for the community. Also keep in mind what are the eligible properties, right? So we have single family houses are eligible for owner-occupied grants. Non-eligible would include single-wide mobile homes, even if they're on a foundation, different Minnesota urban and rural homesteading, properties that have reverse mortgages, and different houses that are in the 100-year floodplain. These are all not eligible properties. Also, contract for deed, if the community opts to allow this, both the resident and the owner must be LMI. Here is an example of an owner-occupied project sample budget. This is what the budget will look like in your grant application. You'll see that you have the activity as owner rehab, and then you have admin as a separate line item. And then your goal, so the goal will be 20 units or 20 houses, right? Single family houses. Each house is 1 unit. And then you have the cost per unit, and total cost without admin, etc. Also keep in mind the leverage sources. We're always looking for that. And who are those leverage sources? Is it committed or not? That little c is pretty important. Next, we're going to talk about rental housing rehab. For rental housing at rehab as an activity, there are a few different options. You have single-family rental, duplex, multifamily, and mixed use. Depending on what you're looking to do within your community, you must follow the different rules accordingly. So let's start with single-family rental housing and duplex rehab. For single-family rental rehab, you have a maximum dollar amount of $25,000 per home. Again, single-family house is $25,000 per home as a maximum of grant funds. These must be freestanding structures on scattered sites or within that target area that we were talking about before. The same goes for the duplex. The max amount per duplex is $25,000, and it must be freestanding structured on a scattered site. For your rentals, you don't have to have a target area, but you can. The deferred loan amounts have a minimum of 5 years for both the duplex and single family rental, and 70% of project costs is the maximum amount of small cities dollars that can be provided to that project. Multifamily rental housing rehab. For multifamily rental housing, there's a maximum of $12,500 of SCDP funds per unit. The deferred loan terms is a minimum of 5 years, and there's a maximum of 70% per project cost that can be Small Cities Development Grant. Now, there are a lot of different types of projects when it comes to multifamily. It might just be a freestanding structure on a scattered site owned by a private individual. Could be a larger project in conjunction with Minnesota housing tax credits. There could be smaller multi-unit projects like utilizing POP funds, or you could even have mixed use where you have rental on top and commercial on the bottom of the building. Keep that in mind to put that in your narrative and your leverage dollars. All these projects do have to follow the Davis-Bacon wage rates. So make sure that you're putting that in your bids, you're keeping that in mind for your budget. This is a good example of a rental project sample budget. You have the rental rehab activity, the amount of units, the dollars per unit, and then costs without the admin. Admin, again, is a separate line item, and you'll break that down. You also have on the right-hand side your leverage sources and funds, and the C meaning that they are committed. Rental housing rehab reminders. Keep in mind, duplexes can only be done under rental rehab, and both units need to meet LMI if one unit is occupied by the owner. Contract for deeds or life estate properties are not eligible. Separate housing activities are on the budget page, so you want to separate the different rental activities if you have multiple within one grant application. And property owners must understand and agree to the rules of the program and understand that if they are going to be putting these grant dollars into their rental units, that 51% of the rental units must be occupied by LMI persons at HUD fair market rents. Next, we'll talk about commercial rehab. Commercial rehab must be combined with a housing project in your grant application. It cannot come in as a standalone item. Again, before we talked about comps or comprehensive applications, this is what we're talking about. So you have housing plus commercial would create a comp. You can only have one small cities development project per legal description for commercial. Buildings must be occupied by retail and or independently owned businesses. And you have to demonstrate how the funds will improve the vitality of the community. How will you be using these dollars to really rehab and give a shot in the arm to your slum and blight area? The commercial rehab policy requirements include small cities development funds are a maximum of $40,000 per unit for commercial. The Small Cities Development Program maximum is 80% of total project costs, and there's a deferred loan term of a minimum of 5 years. For commercial rehab, there are a few different factors to think about when pulling together your application and your budgets. One, that federal Davis-Bacon Act does apply, so having that as part of your budget and in the future bids will be necessary. You also want to make sure you look at where the leverage dollars are coming from. Now, the leverage dollars could be from the property owners themselves, the city, county, or an economic development agency. Also keep in mind that for non-eligible items, so items that the SCDP grant cannot cover, can be private match dollars from the owner or from those different agencies. Here is a comprehensive project sample budget. Again, you have the owner-occupied, rehab, and admin split out. Then and that's LMI. Then slum and blight, SMB for the federal objective. You'll see commercial rehab broken up between your admin and your project. Your unit goals, your budgets per unit, and then the leverage sources and if it is committed or not. Next, we'll talk about public facility rehab. For public facilities, municipal sewer and water projects, the city and project must be on the state of Minnesota's priority project list, or the PPL. There must be a clear physical need described within your application. And the monthly cost per EDU are $1.5 0.5% of median income or $35 per month, whichever is higher. The SCDP grant must make significant reduction in the average user's rates. And funding and regulatory partners like PFA, Rural Development, Department of Health, and Minnesota Pollution Control Agency must approve of the project scope and budget. Cannot assess the small city development dollars to the landowners. You must meet the federal objective through census or survey, and you can find this number at the deeds website. And you must be able to document that the facility is primarily for residential use. We're not using these dollars to extend water and sewer lines to industrial parks and so on and so forth. It's really to rehab the current infrastructure for housing. Within public facilities, you can also do streetscape and public aesthetic. This must be part of a larger overall community planning effort going on. Likely this would be happening in your downtown or a public gathering area. And you really want to get buy-in from the community, have some sort of a downtown vision or master plan to work off of, where these dollars can help implement that downtown design. If you are going to do this, you need to make sure you break down the different costs associated with the streetscape or public aesthetic project. So different items could be decorative streetlights, trees, garbage cans, wayfinding signage, bump outs, ADA sidewalks, things like that. You just need to make sure that it is properly labeled within your application along with that visioning plan. Community centers are also a public facility project. Funds are used to reconstruct outdated projects that pose a threat or hazard of health and safety to the residents. Public facility projects can get a max of $600,000, and the community centers must benefit the entire community and be supported through resolution or council vote. This is an example public facility sample budget. Again, your federal objective would be LMA. In this project, we are doing water distribution line rehab, and it counts all as one unit. You would have $580,000. $20,000 of that would be admin, adding up to your total max of $600,000. Again, that's the max that you can apply for a public facility project. And it also shares the leverage sources, which is funding partners of PFA and the city. Next, we'll talk about method of distribution. So for our grant program, there are state rules on how the funding can be distributed. So 30% has to go to single purpose applications. So this would be housing or public facility projects. 55% can be comp and must have either commercial, public facility, and housing or some variation of those. 15% can go towards economic development, and this would also include Minnesota investment funds. However, it's not awarded through SCDP application process. They have a separate process. Our goals with this program is to try to help with inadequate supply of affordable housing for low to moderate income people, or other documented conditions that give evidence of the need for improvements or additions to the housing stock serving low and moderate income people. Scoring criteria. When we are looking at applications, a lot of it goes into need, impact, cost effectiveness, and the ability to actually get the projects done. So for housing specifically, the need we look at is housing units occupied by LMI that are substandard within the community. What is the supply of affordable housing within the community? And how have you documented these conditions and need for improvement within your application. What's the impact? How many of these houses will be rehabbed, and how many are actually interested, and with what kind of deficiencies? How close a proximity are these targeted homes? If you are doing a target area A and B, are you trying to make it a mile long square box perimeter, or are you trying to make it 3 square blocks? What is the uniqueness of the community? What else is going on? How does this grant play a piece in the overall puzzle, in the overall piece of the pie for that community and their plans? And what's the cost effectiveness? What committed leverage funds are there? How are these proposed activities benefiting the household? And what are the repayment terms? Are they fair? Are they not fair? Are they high interest rates? Is there no interest rates? Those are things that we look at. For public facility scoring, we review need, impact, and cost effectiveness. Within need, we are looking for documented conditions of need for improvements. We are looking at, will the grant dollars eliminate an urgent threat to public health or safety? And will these dollars improve the provisions of public facilities to the LMI population within the community? Going hand in hand with that is impact. How many different households with deficiencies are in the community that will be helped? Are there any capacity issues from the grant administrator and their ability to handle the ongoing paperwork and administration of Davis-Bacon, or the project as a whole as it goes on through its cycle? To what extent will the proposed activities reduce or eliminate the future need and impact on the community? What cost effectiveness steps are being taken? Is this small cities development grant portion of the funds the sole source of funding, or are there actual committed leverage funds and it's just going to be used as gap financing? What are the costs proposed for the activities per benefiting household, and is it reasonable? Will it completely jack up the prices for everybody on their water bills, for example, or is it going to actually help reduce future costs? These are just some of the different things that we look at for scoring and take into consideration in your projects, along with comprehensive scoring. So again, comprehensive project would be commercial and housing, or public facility and commercial, some sort of dual purpose application. Within need, we're looking at the number, percentage of LMI residents in that target area, the need for improvements to the housing stock serving LMI persons, documented conditions and need for the improvements. But then impact, what's the extent to which the proposed comp program will eliminate slum and blight? What are the long-term physical or economic conditions that this will help solve? How are the activities also working together comprehensively to improve the community? Are you doing a public facility project where you're able to do streetscape aesthetics while also doing a commercial program and mixed use for the downtown mixed use rental and commercial for the downtown? What part do those play together, or don't they? And again, we're also looking at the funding, committed leverage. These funds should be used as gap financing, not just always the sole source of funding. We also look at demographic scoring for all the activities, and these demographics are a per capita valuation of the area. Points are awarded by the inverse relationship to the per capita assessed valuations. And so we're looking at the number of persons at or below the poverty level in that jurisdiction, percentage of residents that are at or below the poverty level, and so on. This plays a major part in scoring higher if they have a higher need, really, is what it comes down to. Next, we'll talk about full applications. For a full application, detailed narrative is required. Updated data from your pre-app is required. and also just documentation in general. An adopted local government resolution, a co-op agreement if needed, rehab interest lists, your slum and blight resolution if you are applying for commercial, maps, and your example surveys used. So for the full application, there is a major citizen participation portion of the project. So you actually have to have a citizen participation plan, and this must be adopted before a public hearing is held. And getting input from people on that is huge. So for this meeting, for your public hearings, you need to have accommodations for those needing access to the meeting, be that hearing impaired or any language barriers. You have to be able to compensate and help with that. You need to be able to promote to different low-income populations, and you need to hold your first public hearing. When you do that, all communities involved in that application must be there and be involved if applicable. Application scoring. All applications may be awarded points for the following items. 90 points could be for need, 90 points in community impact, 30 points in cost effectiveness, 30 points in demographics. For a strong application, as a whole, it's very important to have consistent information. And a lot of times, there can be inconsistent information between the budget and the narrative. We really look hard to make sure that those jive, and that if you're saying you're doing 10 units in the narrative, that is reflected within your budget, and your budgets add up correctly. It's also very important to have excellent supporting documentation. How did you find and come to this conclusion within your narrative? You need to show that the information on how that was done. Also, actual feasible goals and timelines. Are you asking for 55, 60, 70 units to be completed of single-family housing within 1 year? Or are you looking at 10 to 15 over the next 2 years? What's your plan? Lay it out within that narrative. And make sure you really show interest, well-documented interest for rehab. You need to have the community buy in, so then when you and if you get funded, they will be ready to jump on board and start diving into rehab activities. We don't want the money just to sit there, and then it's not helping anyone. So really do that upfront legwork with your pre-app and full application to get these people ready and on board, so then when funding does become available, you're ready to go. Also, strong applications have committed and realistic leverage amounts. You follow the format provided within the application. You have your applications proofread by coworkers or other people. It's clear and concise and can demonstrate a strong capacity to actually get the projects done. A lot of times we see a handful of different common mistakes. This could be exceeding the maximum per project costs, having little to no leverage or overstating the available leverage, missing appropriate signatures, not having your resolutions, not doing your public hearings. Leaving questions blank within the grant application happens all the time as well. So we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to the details, and all of that information is being asked for a reason. We wouldn't just have you put it down for no reason. Here's a list of some different leverage sources that have helped other communities in the past. By no means is this all-encompassing list. These are just some reference points for you. You have Minnesota Housing. They will help a lot of times with owner-occupied or rental housing. MHFA or POP funds, a lot of times will be rental or owner-occupied. PFA will help in public facility projects, oftentimes with sewer and water. You have RRDL, which would be public facility, owner-occupied or rental. You could even try to tap into your utility co-ops or different utility companies locally for any of these projects. An EDA or HRA might have different matching funds or leverage funds to help pay for admin or to help with like weatherization funds, etc. And you could also even have like a local fix-up fund. Maybe the private building owner or business owner will be working alongside a local bank to actually get some leveraged funds to do a project. Here are some of the different timeframes in general that the program is running. We do only have the pre-app and application open once a year, so it's important to grasp this timeline. Usually in July, we have the pre-app on the website and available. It is currently available right now. November 15th, 2019 is a deadline for the pre-app. December 16th, 2019, pre-app projects competitive status is provided to the applicants. So that's when we reach back out to all the people that applied in the pre-app and say, hey, this looks good, or maybe you want to change this, or maybe we could tweak that for a better full application. February 28th, 2020 is the deadline for applications. Then spring of 2020 is when you would be receiving, if awarded, an award letter. And then summer of 2020 is our grant agreements and our implementation workshop, where we spend a day with you going through the program, answering questions, and just doing a hands-on training. For submitting, please be sure to do this for the pre-app and application. One original and one copy, paper copy, is needed. It is, again, is due Friday, November 15th at 4:30 p.m. Faxed or emailed proposals or applications are not accepted, so it has to be in hard copy, one original, one copy. Please keep in mind, if you have any questions or comments about projects or potential projects, to reach out to your rep. Thank you for listening to the 2019 Small Cities Development Program Application Training webinar. If you have any questions, please contact one of the reps below.